Hi there. My name is Beth Green, otherwise known as Granny Rocks, and I'm the one who delayed sweet baby James tonight, so it's not his fault.
Well, there's my introduction, Sweet Baby James, otherwise known as James Maynard.
Okay. And tonight I want to talk about right race, right place, right gender, right time, how privilege plays out. And I hope you listen to this show because I have a lot to share with you from a personal perspective, but also hopefully from a global perspective. So, but before I do, I want to ask Baby James to introduce our show.
Yes, welcome to Granny Rocks, where we have the opportunity to experience Granny Beth's wit, wisdom, and very uncommon sense every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. So thanks for joining us. Now over to Granny.
Thank you. So, I had an experience yesterday that I want to share with you guys. And then I want to talk about some other experiences. And catch me if you can. Don't think you know what I'm going to say. Okay. So, yesterday's story is a story of really getting scared, being rescued, and great sadness.
Okay,
Right?
great
Right?
sadness
Yeah,
too.
right.
Oh,
I was
okay.
greatly sad about the rescue. I'll explain all of this to you
Okay.
if you stay with us. So, many of you know that I am sick and disabled. So it's very hard for me to walk any stairs at all. And especially going down. Sometimes I can make it up. It hurts, but I can make it up. But if I have to go down, I can fall. So yesterday, through some serendipity that I don't have to tell you about, I ended up at a medical appointment and I went to the wrong door. So there were two steps to this door. I didn't know the door didn't open, right? But I was late and I was in a hurry, so I walked up these two steps. Right, and I get up there, and there's this door, and it's locked. There's no way into the building. So I'm standing there, and I turn around, and there is no way that I can walk down those two stairs. None, none, and I'm terrified. So I'm banging on the door, and I can't do that too well because my fingers hurt, but I was doing everything that I could. Nobody heard me, and it was just scary. And I thought, well, I guess I'm just going to die on these steps. I tried to reach James, but I wasn't able to. And finally, I just said, okay, God, help, right? So we live near Eugene, Oregon, not in it because we live in the forest. But we live near Eugene, Oregon. And I just said, I'm going to go out there. And so I stood on the steps and I started waving my hands. And immediately a car pulled over. And the woman got out. She said, I heard her say to the guy, just wait for me or something. And she came over to me. And I explained to her the situation. By this time, by the way, even before she stopped, I was in tears. I mean, I was standing on those steps, terrified, in tears about my helplessness. And it was so frightening, but it was more than that. It was the pain of feeling so disabled and so helpless. And so she came up and she helped me down. And not only did she do that, but she walked around the building and found the right door with me and then walked me into the building and walked me upstairs to where the appointment was. And she stayed with me until they took my temperature and then let me in. I was so... Are you keeping track, honey?
Yes, we've had a hello from Tracy from Arizona. And also Amy, how amazing. Love you both.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And nothing before that?
Nope.
Great. Thank you so much. Good to see both of you. So, why sadness? Well, I'm going to tell you that the very first thing that I thought of after, thank you God, that this woman rescued me was supposing I had been a black man standing on those steps. Would she have come running over?
Good question.
Would she have felt safe? Especially if I looked healthy. But people, you don't know who's got a problem and who doesn't have a problem. I mean, this guy recently, did you read this? He was punched in the jaw by the police. He called the police because he was being robbed. He's a black guy. Police come. walk right by the suspect who's on the floor, and because he has a gun out at the suspect,
He
is what
being
he
the
said,
owner.
the owner. And the policeman punched him, broke his jaw, and his mouth is now wired shut. So, I thought, oh my God, I was the right color. I was, feeble looking. I'm elder. I looked like, a helpless old lady. What she didn't know is that I had a shiv in my pocket. Shiv, that's a word that people used to use for knife. I don't even know if they use that word anymore. So, who knew? You know what I mean? But she took a chance on me. I looked pretty benign. And of course it was true. And she was a musician. I was a musician. Anyway.
Oh, nice. And by
But,
the way, Elizabeth says hello.
oh,
And
hello,
sends
Elizabeth.
love.
Hello.
And Jose says you are both beautiful today. God bless you so much, Mama and Papa.
Oh, thank you. Gracias, gracias, Jose.
Yeah, grazie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grazie, that's Italian. I
Oh,
think Jose
gracias.
probably. So anyway, I really was haunted by this situation for the whole time because I thought about how black people in America grow up not having that confidence that they can hail somebody and that they will respond like, oh, here's a person who needs help. It's like, oh, this is a guy who's going to rob me.
And imagine hailing the police.
Oh, exactly. And in my youth, yes, I had a youth. In my youth, I had a black boyfriend who came from the Caribbean country called Haiti. And he used to walk around, looking very spiffy. He had a sports jacket on, you know what I mean? He was educated. He was going to Columbia University. And he would walk. He got stopped by the police. I guess he was guilty of looking like a professor or, wearing a jacket in a white neighborhood. So, because he was black. Anyway, I saw this discrimination was unbelievable. In fact, I'm going to tell you another horrible story. When I was really maybe 19, 20, something like that, I was raped at knife point by a guy who broke in my window. And he tied me up and blindfolded me and all that stuff. And we talked. I mean, he ended up talking to me for 3 hours about his life, and I knew all kinds of things about him. And I didn't want to go to the police. I felt so much compassion for this guy, but he did rape me, and it was at knife point, and he did threaten to kill me if I screamed. And so, I listened to people, and they said, go to the police. I went to the police. Oh my God, what a mistake that was. In those days, there was nothing for women. These two male police officers were interviewing me, right? And I mean, you could see the marks under my eyes from the blindfold, and you could see the electrical wire that had cut my wrist and everything. And they asked me if he was black, and they said, and this is a true story, they said to me, because if he's black, we're going to go to the neighborhood. I mean, this is New York City. You could have 10,000 people on one block. He said, and we're going to arrest all the black men with records, and we'll beat the shit out of them. I mean, what was I supposed to say? Oh yeah, he was black. Could you arrest all those guys and beat the shit out of them? So, I mean, it was appalling, right? So anyway, that's racism, right? I mean,
and your response was not to give him any that
I
information.
said I have no idea if he was black or not. Of course I knew he was black. I mean, I talked to him, right?
And Nadia says, un saludo muy grande desde Peru.
Yes.
Oh, from Peru.
And lots of love for us. Thank you, Nadia. The same to you. So, anyway, I mean, was there racism? I mean, is there racism? Are you kidding? But there's also sexism. The way they treated me. They told me literally, they asked me if I had struggled. I was all tied up and I was tiny and weak and sick. And they said, well, it would have been better if you had died. So, I have also suffered from police brutality. I mean, I really have suffered from police brutality, being dragged around by the wrists and the handcuffs and having people screaming because I was trying to give welfare women information about their rights. But what I'm telling you this, that even though I was treated abusively by the police, who, by the way, then charged me with assaulting them, because, see, that's the same thing that they do to black people, right? It's like they said I was assaulting them, and that's why they had to roughhouse me, right? And if I dropped my charges, I didn't even, against them, they would drop their charges against me for assaulting a police officer with my hands cuffed, being disabled. But what would have happened to me if I had been black? On top of all of that, I mean, I've been thinking about that. It's like, wow, it's bad enough just being a woman. And it was, I've had a lot of those kind of experiences.
And Liv says, hello, hello, and she sends love.
Hello, hello to you, Liv. So good to see you again. So, those are the facts. I was the right race. I wasn't the right gender. I'd have the right attitude. I was in the protest movement, you know what I mean? They used to come down and beat the club us, and, I was beaten by the police and all that. But they didn't shoot me in my bed, So I was so aware of that. And then I want to tell you another side of that. So I was in Kingston, Jamaica. And this was back in I don't remember when, because I have no memory, but I would say maybe late 60s, 1970. And there was a lot of antagonism towards whites at that time. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying that's the way it was. And I was walking down the street in Kingston, and racial slurs were being hurled at me, and I was scared to death. I wasn't the right race for that situation. See?
Right. The shoe was on the other foot.
The shoe was on the other foot. Right?
And by the way, Ilan just joined us.
Oh.
And she says,
great.
I hope I didn't miss much. Thank you for joining us. You can always catch the rest of it on video.
Oh yeah, there's an important story in the beginning. I hope you hear it about how this whole thing came about.
Yeah.
And I will tell you also, talk about, people rescuing you. I went to New York City College, and the City College of New York it was called, and it was in a black neighborhood, and in order to get to the subway, I had to walk through the streets that only black people lived on. And I don't know what it was. I was looking at a dog, and I was just being friendly towards the stray dog. Actually, I was afraid of stray dogs. And all of a sudden, this group of black people just surrounded me, and they started to, say awful things to me, but they scared the shit out of me, right? And all of a sudden, out of the blue, a black student that I did not know came over, broke right through the crowd, put his arm around me and said, "Hi, sweetheart, I didn't see you." And he walked me right through. And there were other times when I went to Harlem, and a black woman said, I think you're in the wrong neighborhood. She said, "Let me help you go to the right train." I mean, angels have been with me, have helped me, angels of all races. But it just brought to me the pain of all of this privilege, being the right race for that particular situation, being in the right group, being in the right fraternity, being in the Ku Klux Klan, if you're in a place where the Ku Klux Klan is riding herd, not being in the Ku Klux Klan if that's not the right thing to do. How many people, and it's the same thing with, Hispanics and gay people and so on. How many people have been oppressed or damaged or threatened because they were the wrong race or the wrong gender or the wrong gender identification, and it's scary. And I know that, I mean, the facts are in, right, that there's more likely that you're going to get killed by the police if you're black. And
also, if for any crime you commit, compared to a white person, it'd probably be double the sentence.
So I don't know why, but having this situation yesterday of being so helpless and feeling that helplessness and having to rely on someone else, the consciousness of others, and how I have been so saved. I have many, many, many other stories because, I lived a life, right? Being poor and being in bad neighborhoods and drug addicted, infested neighborhoods and all that, which means that there are a lot of miserable people there. And all the things that happened to me, and I just thought, my God, all of the pain that I have experienced at the hands of people who were, oppressive on the hands of the state are nothing to what our black brothers and sisters experience. And that's just a fact, you know. And
Oh, and here's a comment from Ilan.
yes,
I lived in D.C. years ago. I would act like I was touched in bad neighborhoods so no one would bother me. Like she would act crazy.
yeah, boy, I totally understand that. I understand that. I mean, I have so many stories of, of problems with black and white people. But it's the fact is that we live in a society where those who have power will use their power. And let me remind you all, if you don't remember, and you probably do, that white workers were attacked by the police and the Pinkertons and all of that during the union movement. White workers were and have been, it doesn't matter. It's being in the right place at the right time. It means if you are threatening the power structure, you will be threatened by the police. I mean, everybody has seen scenes of the Chicago Convention, Democratic Convention.
Back in 1968.
Back in 1968, where the police were just like clubbing people, sending people to the hospital. I was lucky. I got beaten, but I never went to the hospital for having been hit. And once when I was being clubbed by 4 cops for being in an anti-war demonstration, one of the cops afterwards, I'm on the floor, right? I'm on the ground. And he bent down to me and he said, "Are you all right?" Which I thought was ridiculous. Because of course I wasn't all right. But I thought, gee, I wonder if he would have leaned down and asked me if I was all right if I were a black man. See, I am so not threatening, and yet I've been accused of intimidating an officer when I was arrested. You know what I mean? And the judge threw it out because it was so obvious. But if I looked like a strong, strapping black man, would they have believed me? The judge didn't even have to believe me, he just looked at me. So it's so sad, and I really want each one of us to think about the times that we were in the minority, where we felt threatened, where we didn't believe there were going to be good Samaritans around or people who rescued us, and where we looked like the threat. I mean, who is a threat anyway? Who is a threat? How do we know? How much does prejudice tell us who the threat is and who the threat isn't? And do we go into knee-jerk reactions? So what I'm asking you to do right now is to think of some situations where you were saved, either because you were black and you were in a black neighborhood, if that happened to you, or you were white and you were in a white neighborhood, or you were facing, your family had money and they could bail you out of jail, right? Versus people who didn't have it, or God forbid you're Muslim and you're automatically considered to be a terrorist. Just think about it. Just take a moment to go through what I went through and think about that, okay? So let's take a moment, all right? Jamesy, you too.
Yeah. Well, I was rescued after being stopped by police for making an illegal U-turn, taken to the jail, to the police station, and put in a jail cell until somebody could come and put up the bond for the fine. And this was a pretty traumatic and humiliating experience for me. But luckily, I was able to call somebody who was able to come and get me out.
Right, and you didn't go to prison for 10 years
No,
for
that's right.
assaulting an officer and resisting
Here
arrest.
I was, an attorney, the Bar of Illinois, treated that way. Imagine if I'd been a black man without being an attorney. They could have done anything they wanted. As it was being put in a jail cell for
It's
like
true.
a traffic infraction. Come on.
You know, it's so sad, isn't it? And the um, you know, it's not the police per se. It's the fact that that violence and force are used to protect the status quo. And if you were a woman, I mean, look at what happened to the women's suffrage movement. The fact that those women were, I think, primarily white didn't save them from
Yeah.
being carted off to prison. You know, it's like you, when you're standing up to the clique of the brotherhood or the sister, it's like a sorority, right? They're all protecting each other. Or it's like these political parties that they're all covering each other's asses.
Or like the police brotherhood,
Or the police brotherhood. It's like
covering each other.
it's just, if you have the power, you will use it to protect your own, because someday you feel that you will need to be protected as well. Protected from violence, but mostly protected from justice. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share about this? If not, I just want you to think about it. You know, have we thought about this? See, that's how privilege works. Those who have the power, the club, right? Everybody sticking together to protect themselves and one another. And the more the society is, for instance, the gays being beaten and arrested and in some societies killed.
We have a comment from Alan.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's all about the darkness of division to maintain the power structure.
That's exactly right, Arlen.
You're so right.
It's division to maintain the power structure, because who wins, guys? Who wins? The powers that be always win.
Well, I do have a certain faith in the people. Like, for instance, these current protests are peaceful protests. Yes, there was rioting and looting early on, but now even peaceful protesters are being labeled by people in the power structure, like the president, as terrorists and being shoved to the ground and brutalized and whatnot. But they're persisting, and the truth is out. People are seeing that these are peaceful protesters exercising free speech, and so they're not buying it, that the way they're labeled as wrongdoers and therefore justified in being abused.
So this is a dark time and it's a light time. It's a time of enlightenment. That I thought about this yesterday, and I would not have been thinking about it if it hadn't been for these protests. It would not have crossed my mind that if I had been a black man, that the outcome would probably have been a lot different. I don't know for sure, but it probably would have been a lot different. We are waking up, guys, and let's wake up not just to racism, but let's wake up to all the inequality and the inequities. And people are speaking up. And this gives me so much hope, because there are people in this world who are caring, like that black woman who came over to me when I accidentally got off the train in Harlem. And she made sure that I was on the right train going home. And that guy who came out and put his arm around me and claimed me and took a chance on that crowd turning against him too. And the woman who helped me yesterday, that there is kindness, that there is caring, that there is something in our human nature that tells us that we should not sacrifice human beings for greed, that we are not supposed to redline districts, making it impossible to have any kind of decent economic growth and housing, and creating environments where people are suffering and then blaming them. It's a time of hope because it's a time of awakening. So, come back next Wednesday for Granny Rocks, and who knows what we're going to talk about next time. And also, come back tomorrow for Dreams of Peace, improvisational piano music, where I just improvise at the piano, and that's at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Granny Rocks is 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. And I hope that this show has brought home this incredibly important message that when you are in a situation where you have the power, you can be really brutal. Because nobody is going to hold you to account. Nobody was stopping those guys in Kingston from attacking me. I had no power. I didn't like it. It was scary. I just stopped going downtown Kingston. But people who live in a society where they are outnumbered by race, gender, my God, all the good old boys network, where women have just not had a chance. It's endemic to keep the power, but everybody loses, guys. Everybody loses because we never build that just society that we all desperately need, where we all feel confident and safe. And all we do is increase the venom and increase the distrust. And I understand why people are asking to defund the police, because they want the resources to go into building the communities instead of controlling them. That's what we see. So much control, whether it's the control of women in the suffrage movement, the control of civil rights, people who are protesting, the control of gay people. And when the court system is stacked against you and the police are stacked against you, and people have created all kinds of fear, it's not easy to find your way and find your strength and find not only the community that supports you, but the inner confidence that you can stand up without being angry. And I always admire those people who preach nonviolence and who believe in doing the right thing no matter what. So, thank you. And James, I think.
And Ilan sends an icon which sends love.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye for
Bye-bye.
now.
Remember that we're only on Wednesday nights now, and we also have our video conference afterwards. And you are invited to join us to deepen our understanding of these issues, how they apply to us, and to do some healing work. And if you're interested, go look at the post and see what we are offering. And contact me. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.